Now a change of pace. History, mythology, imagery. A museum exhibition opens our eyes to the symbols of Native American life and culture all around. Jeffrey Brown has our story.
A 1948 Indian brand motorcycle, one of the sleekest machines you're likely to see. Clothing with the logo for your local sports team. And perhaps in your refrigerator right now, a box of Land O'Lakes butter.
She's on her knees and she's holding the box that she's on, so it recedes into infinity. So there's something really profoundly weird going on.
Even more profound, just how pervasive Native imagery is, embedded into the American subconscious. That's according to Paul Chott Smith, a member of the Comanche tribe and co-curator of an exhibition at the National Museum of the American Indian.
It's really this paradox that the country, 330 million people today, 1% of that population is Native American. For most people, they don't see or really think about Indians, yet they're surrounded by Indian imagery, place names, and have connections with Indians on a kind of deep emotional level.
Whether we know it or not.
Whether you know it or not.
Yeah.
We studied native dance.
To that end, the exhibition is titled simply Americans and shows us Indians everywhere, in all aspects of life. Overhead, a prototype of the Tomahawk missile, on loan from the nearby Air and Space Museum. On one large wall, clips from films and TV shows. A side room takes us through the strange history of Pocahontas, known but not really known by all. Around the gallery, headdresses everywhere, in signs and advertising. The image of the Native American or Indian, the museum uses the terms interchangeably, as a symbol of ruggedness or bravery.
This one is of the action shot of where Pocahontas is trying to stop them.
But often with no discernible connection to the products, as in ads over the decades for Calumet baking powder.
An Indian feather headdress has nothing to do with baking powder. It's a completely artificial connection, yet it somehow works because I think it talks about a kind of Americanness and quality that people say, okay, well that baking powder is probably pretty good because there's an Indian headdress on it. And note that it's red, white, and blue headdress.
A history of extermination and appropriation of lands, and yet an embrace of American Indians as a symbol of something authentically American.
There's certainly explicitly racist imagery, but it's a pretty small minority of it because the whole way that Indians have been objectified in the United States is about a kind of noble Indian idea, which is a different kind of caricature than one that's, explicitly vicious and that we're dirty and backward and unintelligent. But obviously it is, even though it's flattering in some way, it's still another kind of a stereotype.
It's also, of course, about images and myths and not about the actual people themselves.
By 1903.
Smith says this distinction began in the late 19th century after the protracted armed conflict between natives and settlers, and later the U.S. Army, had come to an end.
It was like there was a big meeting of the American collective unconscious to say, now we're going to freeze Indians in the past. The actual Indians that are on reservations, in 1895 or 1910, or the actual Indians who might be living in LA, living lives like other people in Los Angeles, they're not going to appear in entertainment.
One area of continuing contention, sports names and logos. In recent years, some schools and universities have stopped using Native American nicknames. Earlier this year, Major League Baseball's Cleveland Indians announced they'll stop using the cartoonish Chief Wahoo logo on their uniforms, but they're keeping the Indians' name. More controversially, the National Football League's Washington Redskins are keeping their name. Smith is a fan of his local team, but not its name, though he understands the strong feelings.
I have great empathy for fans, especially here in D.C., but fans don't choose the name of the team, right? A rich owner chooses it, and in the case of these names, it usually goes back to, a century sometimes. I get why people aren't pleased when someone like me comes in and says, this name is a dictionary-defined slur, as it is in D.C. But if you come in and try to take it away from somebody, I get that that's, you feel attacked.
No one would name a team the Redskins anymore, but not long ago, Victoria's Secret dressed model Carly Kloss like this, only to apologize after criticism. The museum wants people to think about the images around them and what they convey. Visitors are encouraged to write of their own experiences.
Look at this one. I had a dream catcher over my bed as a kid. Why?
I think what the show's designed to do is to say, you're not alone with these stories.
And for the country as a whole, Smith says, there's something more at stake.
There's this challenge to the United States idea of itself to have to acknowledge that the United States National Project came about at great cost to Native people. So what do we think about that? That's what this exhibition is saying. How do we come to terms with that? Should Americans just feel guilty? I don't think so. All Americans inherit this. How do we make sense of it? And the starting point is kind of looking at Indians in everyday life.
For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Jeffrey Brown at the National Museum of the American Indian in Washington, D.C.